There's a sentence many aging parents learn to say so well, that their children stop hearing what it might be hiding. I'm fine. They say it when you ask about the doctor, when you notice they are moving more slowly, when something in their voice sounds different, and you do not have enough time to ask a second question. Sometimes they are fine, but sometimes those two words mean, if I tell you the truth, will you still let me be in charge of my own life? Rachel did not know her mother had been taking a taxi to the hospital. Not once, for 3 separate appointments. Over nearly 3 months, every Tuesday evening, Rachel called her mother on the drive home from work. How are you doing, Mom? I'm fine. Did you get your groceries? Yes. Everything okay? Everything is fine. Then traffic would thicken. A work message would appear. Her son would ask what was for dinner, and Rachel would say, "Okay, good, I just wanted to check." Her mother always ended the same way. "Don't worry about me." Rachel believed those words because she needed to. Her life was full. Work followed her home. Her teenage son rarely gave warning when he needed a ride. Her husband was helping care for his own father. Her mother's "I'm fine" felt like one part of life that was still under control. Margaret was 71. She had lived in the same house for 38 years. She knew which floorboard creaked outside the bedroom, which kitchen drawer stuck in humid weather, and which roses needed less water than the others. Her husband had died 4 years earlier. Afterward, people began asking whether she planned to move. Rachel mentioned a smaller apartment. A neighbor mentioned a senior community. Her doctor asked whether someone checked on her regularly. Margaret understood why they asked, but every question sounded slightly different to her. Not, "How do you want to live?" but, "How long can you keep living this way?" So she became careful about what she shared. When her knee hurt, she called it stiffness. When she felt dizzy while standing at the sink, she held the counter until the room became still, then finished washing the cup in her hand. She was not trying to create a secret life. She was trying to keep one bad afternoon from becoming a family meeting about the rest of her life. The first hospital visit began at a pharmacy. While waiting for a prescription, the lights above her seemed to move. She reached for a shelf. A woman beside her caught her arm before she fell. The pharmacist found her a chair. At the hospital, doctors ran tests, adjusted one medication, and asked her to return. Margaret took a taxi home. That evening, Rachel called. "How are you doing, Mom?" Margaret looked at the paper bracelet still around her wrist. "I'm fine." She told herself she would explain after the next appointment. When there was more information, when there was less reason for Rachel to panic. But the next visit led to another test, then another. And each time she waited, the truth became harder to tell. Now she was not only hiding an appointment, she was hiding the fact that she had hidden it before. Margaret placed the hospital papers beneath old recipes. She pushed the new medication behind the tea. She folded the taxi receipts into the kitchen drawer beside the batteries and tape. And she kept saying, "I'm fine." Rachel began noticing small things. A bruise near her mother's wrist, a grocery bag left on the floor, the car staying in the same position for several days. But each clue had an ordinary explanation. I bumped into the cupboard. The bag was heavy. Didn't need to go anywhere. And Rachel wanted to believe her, because believing her mother was fine allowed Rachel to remain the daughter, instead of becoming the person responsible for every decision. Then one Friday afternoon, Rachel arrived without calling first. Her son's practice had been canceled and she was already nearby. Margaret was in the backyard cutting dead leaves from the roses. She looked annoyed for half a second when she saw the car. Then she smiled. "You should have told me you were coming." They talked about ordinary things while Rachel carried groceries into the kitchen. Her son's grades, the neighbor's new fence, whether the tomatoes would survive another week of heat. Then Rachel needed tape. She opened the kitchen drawer. 3 taxi receipts were lying on top. Same destination, the medical center. Different dates. Under them was a folded hospital wristband. Her mother's name, a date from 11 weeks earlier. Margaret entered carrying a bowl of tomatoes. She saw what Rachel was holding. Neither of them spoke. Finally, Rachel asked, "What is this?" It was nothing. "You went to the hospital." "I was dizzy." "3 times?" "Those were follow-up visits." "You went alone?" "I took a taxi." "You could have called me." "I know. Why didn't you tell me?" Margaret placed the bowl on the table. Then she asked, "What would you have done if I had?" Rachel answered immediately, "I would have driven you." Margaret waited. "I would have called the doctor." Still nothing. "I would have checked your medication." Margaret looked at the car keys on the counter. Rachel followed her eyes. "And until we knew what was happening, I probably would have asked you not to drive." The room became quiet. Rachel heard her own words, not as promises of love, but as a list of decisions she had already made. Margaret pulled out a chair. "I wasn't afraid you would worry," she said. "I was afraid you would start deciding everything for me." That was the moment Rachel understood. Her mother had not been protecting the illness. She had been protecting the person she feared the illness would erase. The woman who still chose when to wake up, what to cook, where to go, whether to keep the house, whether an uncertain medical result meant she had suddenly lost the right to speak first about her own future. Rachel had thought honesty would give her access. Margaret feared honesty would become surrender. Margaret was not the only parent who had learned to hide difficult news inside 2 reassuring words. Older adults sometimes minimize pain, illness, or recovery problems because they do not want to worry the people they love. Sometimes they want to avoid becoming a burden. Sometimes they are protecting their independence. And sometimes they are afraid that once their children see them as fragile, they will stop seeing them as capable. That does not mean every "I'm fine" is a lie. It means people sometimes hide health information inside close relationships, because telling the truth may change how others see and treat them. For an aging parent, being seen as fragile can feel dangerously close to being treated as incapable. Rachel sat across from her mother. She did not reach for the medication. She did not take the keys. She let the discomfort remain. Then she said, "I'm sorry." Margaret looked down at her hands. "I know you were trying to help. I was trying to remove every risk so I wouldn't be afraid." Rachel looked toward the receipts. "But if I make every decision for you, I'm not helping you live. I'm helping myself feel safer." Margaret's face softened. It was never care versus neglect. It was safety versus autonomy. And love had been pulling them toward opposite sides. Rachel asked, "What do you want me to know?" Margaret thought for a moment. "If I fall, I'll tell you." Rachel nodded. "If I go to the emergency room, I'll tell you." "Okay. If a doctor changes something important, I'll tell you." "And what do you still want to decide alone?" Margaret looked around the kitchen. "Most things." Rachel smiled. "Fair enough." Then Margaret added, "But you can ask." "Ask what?" Not, "Are you okay?" That question is too easy. "What should I ask?" Margaret considered it. Then she said, "Ask me what became harder this week." The following Tuesday, Rachel called from her parked car. She did not open her email. She did not begin with a checklist. She asked, "What became harder this week?" Margaret was quiet. Rachel waited. Finally, her mother said, "Carrying laundry down the stairs?" Rachel felt the old panic arrive. The urge to say, "You cannot keep doing that. You need to move. I am coming tomorrow." Instead, she asked, "Do you want me to listen or help you think about it?" Margaret laughed softly. "That is a very careful question. I'm practicing. Help me think about it." They talked for 12 minutes. Not about selling the house, not about taking away the keys, about moving the laundry basket, adding a handrail, letting Rachel's son carry heavier loads on Sundays. Small adjustments, chosen with Margaret, not imposed on her. Respecting an aging parent's autonomy does not mean pretending danger is not real. Serious symptoms, falls, and medical emergencies still require appropriate care. And some families carry histories where distance is necessary. But outside those moments, care does not have to begin by taking control. Sometimes it begins by making room for the truth. without turning the person speaking into a problem to manage. Aging changes what people can do. It should not automatically erase their right to decide who they are. And being an adult child does not mean standing back until a crisis happens. It means learning a harder form of love, close enough to notice, calm enough to listen, and humble enough to help, without immediately taking over. Sometimes I'm fine really does mean I'm fine. Sometimes it means I don't want to worry you. And sometimes it means something deeper. Please help me without taking me away from myself.